kind of, what's the word, exotic places in those days, like Lima, Peru, there was a Hare Krishna restaurant. And when he went someplace else to build a dam, there was a Hare Krishna restaurant. So it all started here. It's all the information, all the inspiration from Srila Prabhupada. So I think that's important to kind of think, we're very, very fortunate to be part of that. Because it started here. And it's one of the things, there's so many things to think about in terms of Prabhupada's contributions and his accomplishments. We know this part wasn't read, but the reason he was here, who remembers, why did he come here? What led him to be here? In this place. Yeah. Where was he before? He was on the Bowery, right? And what happened on the Bowery? Was Bowery, I don't know if the Bowery is still troublesome place. Yeah. He didn't have a regular permanent place to stay, so a friend who was moving in San Francisco said, look, I've got an AIR loft, and you can stay there, but you're going to share it with this other person who I've arranged to be there. And that other person had a bad acid trip, and like at some point kind of flipped out, and Prabhupada's room was like behind a curtain, and he came and slid the curtain aside, and Prabhupada could immediately tell that he's deranged, and he was dangerous and making all kinds of noises and threatening moves, so Prabhupada kind of had to literally run down the stairs, 70 or 71-year-old man at that point, run down the stairs in New York City, no place to go, no money, no backing, and he wasn't sure what to do. So he called someone named, if I remember, James Green, and then went and he called Mukunda, and within Mukunda, later Swami, who's got a whole story with the Beatles, he found this place. And they met with, I think it's James Green and Prabhupada and Mukunda, and the real estate agent met out on the street just in the blocks there, and he explained that he had this place for rent, and also that there was an apartment up back, and that he'd be willing to rent it to them. And Mukunda, I believe, was talking about how Prabhupada was a very esteemed author, which he was, and spiritual leader, and take it seriously. It wasn't just like a couple, hippie kids trying to rent a space. And and then Prabhupada, it's just, we know, and we read more about him, and you mentioned the biography, the principal biography about Prabhupada, the Lilamrita. One of the things you pick up there is Prabhupada's expertise in everything. So one of the kind of unique things was he's out on the street, and they were presenting this place, and he is literally on the street. He's like living on somebody's sofa at that point in time, and he needed to relocate. I think he stayed with James Green for a few days. And the real estate man said, yeah, he'd be happy to rent it. And Prabhupada said, very good. And I'm going to paraphrase. He said, and we have an international society, and we have memberships, and we would be very pleased if you could be a member for the first month in exchange for the rent, and blah, 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 blah. And the man was so grateful and honored that Prabhupada added him to it. I think, if I remember correctly, that was the first month's rent, or else maybe there was a deduction on the rent, an extra $10 a month or something like that. So Prabhupada was so conscious, and it really gives, we study his life in so many ways, because we get insights what it means to be a devotee of Krishna in every situation. So that's an example how he's, as a devotee, is someone who's understanding that there's very limited resources. It all belongs to Krishna. And here's a person that seems receptive and appreciative of what we're doing. So maybe he'd be willing, I'm going to ask if he would reduce the rent. And which just reminds me now, I'm thinking of another place, a little bigger, more grandiose than this, which is the Detroit Temple, which was known at that time as the Fisher Mansion. Some of you know the story about that. And this was a beautiful, beautiful home that was built by Lawrence Fisher years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but General Motors cars, all used to have like a little thing that said "Body by Fisher." They made the body parts, or the automobile body itself, for General Motors cars. So this was the man, his mansion in Detroit, one of many, many mansions in that, when the Motor City was really booming. And somehow it had fallen into, it was just available for sale and probably in disrepair. So they were taking a tour. Some of the devotees suggested that they could buy this property. And as Prabhupada was going around with some of the devotees, he commented that every single room in the house was worth the asking price. If you haven't been there, you want to see a contrast from this humble but spiritually surcharged place to that not humble but spiritually surcharged place. I mean, there's some carved doors into the music room that themselves are supposed to be, you know, complete treasures, hand carved, beautiful wooden doors and tile and all this kind of stuff that you would expect somebody to build in their house in the late or mid-20s. So anyway, so Prabhupada was taking a tour of that building, and then they sat down to negotiate. And again, Prabhupada just said, you know, we have a spiritual movement, it's traveling all around the world, and it's a very, very important thing. And as far as price, I think you should donate it to us. With a straight face, you know. And I don't know, they don't get into details what happened next, but obviously that had softened the man up a little bit for some serious negotiations. And they ended up buying it, and it was a big deal in Detroit because the building itself was purchased by the two kind of two of the very famous families in Detroit, one of which was the Ford family, Alfred Ford, or now Alton Barish, who was the great-grandson of Henry Ford, paid for half the building, and then Lekka Shravanti, Lisa Ruther, who was the daughter of the labor leader Walter Reuther, who's not so well known in other parts of the country, but in Detroit, very well known in the whole strikes against the auto companies in the 40s when things were not so favorable towards unions. And so these two families had been like arch enemies for the longest time, at least in terms of their positions. But here, these two young people, young adults, kids of the great founding fathers of those two families, came together and purchased this beautiful temple owned by Lawrence Fisher and turned it into a Hare Krishna temple. So, and again, the example, you know, Prabhupada saying, why don't you just give it to us and helping with the negotiations. So I think the thing that's significant about, to bring to mind about Prabhupada, there's a lot of books about him now, and I oftentimes think about it as like they talk about a multifaceted jewel. You look at it from a different side and it looks different. So there are like a few biographies and you read, and Prabhupada was like this really tough spiritual master, demanding austerity and pushing his disciples. And you read that other biographies, and Prabhupada was just a total jokester. And every time certain disciples would come to see him, they would have to bring a joke, and Prabhupada would respond with a joke. And Shamasundar's book was a beautiful one, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, 3-volume set. He just talks about all the exciting escapades that they had together. And one that I can remember, they were someplace, forgive me for not remembering the details, but they had to go across there's some bridge. They had some old car, old Cadillac or something like that. For some reason they were driving, I don't remember the details. And they weren't sure if the bridge was going to go. And Prabhupada at that point in time is maybe 75 years old. He's an old gentleman from India, and rather, you know, you would think reserved and I don't want to say debonair, that's probably not a word, but either way, you know, a real gentleman. And Shamasundar wasn't sure what to do about the bridge, so Prabhupada told me, he said, back up the car and floor it. It's in his biography. And they, you know, they raced across the bridge and kind of like flew across the bridge, and everything was fine. So there's all these amazing stories and histories about the Srila Prabhupada and what an amazing personality he is. And when we think about it, it would take someone like that to cross the ocean at 70 years old on a freight ship. As we understand, 2 heart attacks on the way across the boat. Got here, had a place to stay for 30 days only, had no institutional support, no real financial backing. When he got off the boat, he had, I think, well, it was less than $20, 16 or something like that. Why? Because he'd sold a set of his books, yet again, Prabhupada's financial expertise. He sold a set of his 3 volumes of his books to the ship's captain. That was all the money he had. I mean, you can imagine even in these days, okay, take away your phone and all the ability to, you know, tap here and pay for stuff. Take that away. Take away your credit cards. Take away your cash. Take away your bank account. Take away anybody you know you can call up and ask them, can you please send you money? Put you on a boat for 2 months to a strange culture, strange country at the age of 70 and start a religious movement. In the midst of the 60s, when you're telling people no drugs, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. Like, what are you, crazy? You know? I mean, it really is, it's phenomenal. And I think last time we played that little video with an excerpt from Tom Hopkins, who was talking about, historically, from an academic point of view, Prabhupada's contributions, he said, as a scholar, the only two people he considered that they can compare to historically are Jesus and Muhammad. So that's the scholarly opinion, on top of what we learn about the people that were really with him. So I just wanted to kind of discuss a few of those different sides. I mean, in one sense, you see some of the pictures of Prabhupada, and sometimes devotees or people that come, they only see these pictures of this like stern person, because he had that persona, because he's telling people this world is an illusion, give up all of your stuff that doesn't really make you happy, all of your addictions, and just kind of following the trends of the day, and get in deeper sense with yourself, and say no to your mind and your senses, and get in touch. There's heavy topics. So he had that kind of stern side to him. But on the other sides, the many sides, he was like really adventurous, and forgive me, this is too old a word, I don't know if it's used even anymore, I should ask my granddaughters, but he was like really cool. He was really cool,
It's so cool.
He really was. Do they? Okay, good. But you're too old to know whether they still use it. I'm going to ask my granddaughters. Okay. I mean, like in other like little stories, because definitely my most read book is Lilamrita. I've read Bhagavad Gita a lot, but probably Lilamrita more cover to cover. And I remember, little vignettes like here, again, might have mentioned this last time I was here. The man that owned this building was Mr. Chuti, Chuti. And he was an elderly man, immigrant, who owned the building. Prabhupada sometimes would use him as an example in classes, how some of these people work hard their whole lives and they put their money into something and it's just more hard work, and how this was an old falling apart building and this and that. But Prabhupada was very friendly to him and very respectful as the owner of the building. And it's described that sometimes Prabhupada would help him take out the trash. Okay? Now, raise your hand if you've been here before. Who's been here ever before? Okay. Keep your hand up if you've ever gone outside and looked to see if there's any in the neighbor's trash that you can help take it out. Anybody done that? He did that. Now, why did he do that? Because he understood the importance of maintaining friendly relationships. He's got a bunch of, like, at that time, just young hippies coming and staying in this elderly man's place, and he's trying to keep good relationships. And they would sometimes do this chanting, and people upstairs would get upset, I guess back here, not in this section, pour hot water through the floor, and, it was a tough situation. He's a great example for us doing communications about the need to, like, understand other people's, we say, needs, interests, and concerns. So he did these amazing things, and then later when he went to San Francisco, which was the second or third, it was San Francisco, it was New York, San Francisco, and then Montreal around the same time. And there, again, same thing, lots of young devotees, and he went on a cookout. They had a bonfire on the side of the ocean. They had kirtan by the Pacific Ocean. And at night, and they watched the sun go down. And they did the kirtan, just like Prabhupada did the Prema Swami praise here at the end. At the end, he said, Lord Krishna ki jai, this ki jai, that ki jai, Pacific Ocean ki jai. And which is like, ki jai, like all glories to the different manifestations of the Lord. And he was reaffirming among these young people, these young friends and followers, that we can see everything in connection to the divinity. We can transform everything we do into a source of spiritual progress and ultimately spiritual pleasure if we see Krishna's being there behind the scenes. And I mean, just so many things. Prabhupada, he went to Russia, what was it, 1970, I think? Around that 70, 72 something. I mean, nobody went to Russia in those days. That was the Iron Curtain. You didn't go to Russia. Why did he go to Russia? He's going to go preach about God in a country where the official position is atheism, and you can get thrown in jail for doing anything overtly religious. So much so that when he went and met with one professor of Indology, I believe, and they had an interesting meeting, friendly meeting. It's recorded, and Prabhupada was surprised that even this man that was so well versed in understanding Indian philosophy was convinced at the end of life, that's it. There's nothing after this life. So you kind of wonder, like, well, what are you studying this stuff for if there's no validity to it? But either way, after that meeting, Prabhupada said, so I'd like to speak to some of the students. Not possible, Swamiji. Well, perhaps some of the other professors. Not possible, Swamiji. Well, what else can it do? Well, you can take the tour bus by the government, Russian government agent around town, and they'll talk about the glories of Marxist philosophy, and you can only go on this street, not that street. That's how closed it was. And yet he went there thinking maybe there's an opportunity to get a little bit of an inkling in Krishna consciousness, which he did. Of course, now you go today, there's so many Russian devotees. There's thousands of Russian devotees. So many examples of that. Of course, he sent 6 of his disciples, some of whom had started here, to London, where you two were. Anybody else from London here? Okay, yeah, you don't count. No, sorry, you do, of course. But you're a global guy. You go everywhere around the world. I don't think of you as London. So he sent 6 of his 3 young married couples to London to start the Krishna movement. And because they picked up in this mood of Prabhupada being so bold and just so much in the sense of, hey, Krishna is God, he's our best friend, he'll open the doors. I mean, and their experiences are absolutely hilarious. I mean, and similar mood of Prabhupada. The 6 of them went, I think they got as far as Germany, and they didn't have enough money. If you're going to get into London in those days, you had to show you had enough money in your bank account. So they pulled all their money and they put in a bank account, and they went and got into the UK with showing the money they had. Immediately opened a bank account there, wired it back to the other couple in Germany, who took the same money, went back to the UK, got in the country with the same money. Please don't do this. We're not advocating this. But you just see that the pioneering spirit that they picked up from Prabhupada. I mean, he really was careful, but absolutely, you could say, for sure, not overly cautious. I mean, he took some big risks, which is particularly interesting because when we study the Krishna philosophy and when we go a little deep into our chanting and our practice and start understanding the validity and the reality of spiritual experience and our spiritual identity, then we realize how fortunate we are to have been given the opportunity to understand there's something else than just the kind of day-to-day stuff that most people in the world are pursuing. And the bhakti process that he brought is so wonderful because technically, I mean, we know, yoga societies are so popular these days. There's probably 10 just on 2nd Avenue. And at the same time, oftentimes, many people, they're not going deeper than what seems to be just on the outside. Yoga is an exercise, and it's a methodology of understanding the difference between the self and the body, and understanding the soul. That's the real deeper purpose of it. And the process of bhakti is there, helping us understand, okay, you're the spirit soul, now what? And that's the real question. Now what do I do? Okay. I can remember when I first was going to Zen Buddhist retreats and visiting the Krishna temple, and I was going to church once in a while and different things, and thinking that, well, if there's a spiritual reality different from the ordinary day-to-day type of life that I had been leading, I can remember consciously thinking, well, then which side of the bed should I get out of every morning? I mean, how do I spiritualize what I'm doing? It shouldn't, what does it mean? What do I do? What do I think? What do I say? What do I feel that's different? And the process that Prabhupada brought, given by Lord Chaitanya and originally Krishna thousands of years ago, was how we can actually spiritualize our everyday lives, how we can, just like this place. I mean, what is this? This is just a crummy little storefront on 2nd Avenue, right? And they're putting high rises, but there's still the same funeral parlors down the road. Lilamrita, the book, talks about how in those days you look out the street, there was this funeral home, and I think there was a place that actually sold gravestones right across the street, and some of that stuff is still there. But because it's been spiritualized, it's really, for people all around the world, this is like a sacred tirtha, or a place of pilgrimage, because the consciousness that was evoked from here. So that's the place that we are, and I'll just maybe mention one or two other things, and then we'll see if there's some questions or comments. because I'm sometimes amazed. I'm not a scholar, so I haven't done a serious study of all of Prabhupada's books in a serious way. But certain things you hear him say, or you read what he's written, and you just think like, that's like deeper than the pages seem to say. It's like you've opened it up, you brought it up to the modern reality. This is we refer to Prabhupada, many of you know, obviously as our founder, Acharya. Acharya means one who teaches by example. And one of the reasons that he so much deserves that title is his ability to take this ancient wisdom, bring it to New York City, the Lower East Side, attracting, tough audiences. I think, what was the name? Fame of the poet, Allen Ginsberg said, this is like the toughest audience in the world, to try to come in the mid-60s to the Lower East Side and try to talk about, again, spirituality and self-restraint and control. I mean, forget it. Very, very tough audience. But he knew how to make it relevant and to everybody. So here's just a couple of my favorite things. In this verse, the well-known verse, the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a pranamanize of your religion, at that time I descend myself. Prabhupada kind of expands on that. And then he just says this, and I don't know, maybe other commentators have said this previously, if those of you that have studied that can tell me later. Don't tell me now, because it'll take away from my point, but tell me later. But Prabhupada just says, it's not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. That's not in the verse. He doesn't talk about that at all. It's like, where's that coming from? He says, it's not a fact he only appears on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. That's not there either, so he's explaining to us what it means when it says he comes again and again and again. It's a living tradition. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. And then he says, sometimes he descends personally, sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. So again, considering his audience, okay, his son. I mean, I just came from Italy. Duh, who might he be talking about there? It's like, open a building, he's everywhere with his mom, right? His mom, you see his mom more than him, actually. You walk in a lot of churches like, wow, this is like, where's Jesus? Oh, there he is. He's behind Mary. Okay, got it. Which is okay. That's different theologies. But so he's emphasizing in the form of son or servant. Okay, just in Istanbul, da. Who do we think maybe Prabhupada was trying to make the connection there? Muhammad, he's worshipped as the servant, the topmost servant of God. So Prabhupada's, again, putting in a contemporary context for us. And one other one that I just found is just phenomenal, just had these two. In the verse where Krishna explains, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them. Take a picture quick. The wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performance lack of knowledge. In the second paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada says, people who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Lord Krishna advises us to not disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But, the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord. They're more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. So it's such a remarkable, remarkable statement that he's explaining that Krishna is speaking to Bhagavad Gita, who's trying to deliver Arjuna, who is the source behind everybody being, all the different religious practices that you read in the 4th chapter. Devotees of the Lord, he says, are even more kind than the Lord. Why? Because they know the purpose of the Lord. Which is, to me, when I think about that, such a phenomenal understanding of the nature of personhood in the Vaishnava tradition. That Krishna, God, the absolute divinity, the source of everything, gives us free will. We can stay in the spiritual existence, or we can come here if we choose to. Birth after birth after birth, species after species, avenue after avenue, street after street, wherever we want to go to try to enjoy this material world. But ultimately, Krishna is in the heart of every living being, and he's trying to like get us back because he knows we can't be happy here. But he won't force us. This is our Vaishnava philosophy. He does not force us. He stays hidden, like behind the curtain. He's watching. There's a nice, last time I quoted another Christian song, there's a nice Christian song. The Lord is watching you, the Lord is watching you, the Lord is watching you from a distance. My wife doesn't like that because she says he's not a distance, he's right there. So I say, okay, it's a subtle difference, but I kind of like the mood of the song. You know, he's watching, he's watching, he's watching. He's watching and is described in the Upanishads. He's waiting to see when we turn our attention to him. But he won't bother us. He doesn't force himself on us. But then Prabhupada is saying the devotee, because he understands how much love Krishna has for each and every one of us, he's willing to take risks and approach people even that don't want to hear, because he knows actually that's what you need, and it's actually what Krishna wants, but he won't do it because he's not going to force himself. And in that mood, he came here, to this place, to this storefront, started this movement, and because of the sincerity and the depth of his conviction and purity, the impact he had on people, it's gone all over the world. And there's people all around the world that would like to be here. So we should remember and think about how fortunate we are to be here and understand this really, really, really is a special place. It's not just a little storefront on 2nd Avenue that has some deed on Wednesday night.
Hare Krishna. So this was an amazing lecture by Prabhuji, and so we'll hear about the glories of His Grace Anuttama Prabhu. So I'm sharing the presentation. So Anuttama Prabhu was the personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. He's a GBC leader and an author in ISKCON. So about the introduction. He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, a GBC member and minister of ISKCON Communications. And he got connected to the Hare Krishna movement during its early expansion in the West in the late 60s. And he was deeply inspired by the teachings, purity, and vision of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And he thus accepted the path of Bhakti Yoga with seriousness and dedication. And thus he dedicated his life in Srila Prabhupada's mission. And for nearly 5 decades, he has been serving. About his early spiritual search, he explored Zen Buddhism, Christianity, and other paths. And he was sincerely searching for spiritual truth. And thus encountered Krishna consciousness in Denver in 1975. I think so. The year is not correct. And immediately he got attracted to Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And he got Harinam and Brahman Diksha from Srila Prabhupada. And he joined the Denver ISKCON temple and received initiation from Srila Prabhupada in 1976 in Vrindavan. He inspired to dedicate his life for spreading Krishna consciousness, and he served enthusiastically in temple life and book distribution. About leadership and early services, he served as temple president in Denver. He is known for his steadiness, humility, and cooperation. He has developed skills in leadership, communication, and outreach, and has prepared for broader responsibilities in ISKCON. And he mainly has increasing responsibilities in temple management, preaching programs, devotee care, and training, and is known for his thoughtful communication, strong philosophical grounding, and ability to work cooperatively with devotees. About Washington, D.C. service. Actually, before Washington, D.C. service, he preached, especially international preaching efforts, and he played a very vital role in strengthening ISKCON's institutional stability and helping devotees navigate post Srila Prabhupada challenges after Srila Prabhupada's departure. And he promoted unity, accountability, and faith in Srila Prabhupada, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. So that was a major service he did from the years could be said 1977 to 1980s, 90s. And about his Washington DC services, he moved to Washington DC in 1993 with his good wife Rukmini Devi Mataji, and engaged with government, media, and interfaith leaders. He helped establish ISKCON as a respected spiritual presence, and he focused on relationship building and public understanding. About his services, which is currently going on, GBC and Communications Ministry. He was appointed to the GBC of ISKCON and as a GBC member in 2000, and he oversees ISKCON communities in the Mid-Atlantic region. He serves as International Director of ISKCON's Communication. He participates in policy making, strategic planning, and protecting Srila Prabhupada's position as founder Acharya. He strengthened ISKCON's global image and outreach. Before education and training, he served as the chairman of ISKCON GBC as well, and he facilitated cooperation among global leaders. He encouraged transparency and responsible governance and emphasized unity without compromising Siddhant and Sadhana. And about his educational and training, he has developed ISKCON communications course. He conducts leadership and communication seminars worldwide, mentors devotees in effective Krishna-centered communication, and encourages integrity, humility, and compassion in leadership. He has been involved in various editorial projects and advisory roles for senior leaders and institution. And apart from this, there was one more important service about his writing of books. He has been doing that over the years. About his family legacy and inspiration, together with Rukmini Devi Mataji, he supports devotee families. He co-founded Children of Krishna and Grace the Vision team, a calm, steady guide during challenges, an inspiring example of serving Srila Prabhupada through communication. So, like, there are various more services which he has been doing over the year. He is known as the bridge builder and counselor. He's a very calm personality. He acts as a bridge between senior and younger devotees, between management and grassroots devotees, and various traditional and modern challenges. So even I have some personal incidences with Prabhu. He was in Ujjain for 2016 or 2017 GBC meeting, which we had in ISKCON Ujjain. It was so amazing to have Prabhu here. He's a very, like, anyone can go and talk to him. He's such an amazing personality. And I remember I used to serve one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and he said that if you are serving Maharaj, you are one of my best friends. Like, he was very, very much, friendly. And I was somewhat around 15, 16 years old at that time. So I remember Prabhuji has an amazing personality. You can open up to him anytime, anywhere. Even in Mayapur during this Gaur Purnima festival, you can find Prabhuji around the temple campus. He openly talks to everyone. So we have got such amazing Prabhupada disciples amongst us who have been teaching by their own example. So we are fortunate to have them, to learn from their personal example, how they are teaching, uh, how we should be acting in Srila Prabhupada's mission, so that at the end of the day, we please Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. Jai His Grace Anuttama Prabhu ki Jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.